Welcome to Off the Wire, the podcast that helps you curb your cybersecurity risk and tackle technology challenges. I'm Tanner and I'm joined by Anthony. We're two IT executives with 35 years of experience. Let's start the show. Picture this. You've been working at your job for a while, and now there's a new opportunity. Someone's leaving, someone's retiring, and that advanced position, either technically or in leadership, opens up. You want to be on the top of the list, but did you know there's a lot of subtle things that get noticed and things that get negatively noticed that may or may not affect whether you're the person considered for the job? Well, today, Anthony and I are going to kind of talk about what we've seen in our careers as things that get noticed, things that either get noticed in a positive manner or things that get noticed in a negative manner. So that's what we're going to talk about on this episode of Off the Wire. So, Anthony, there's a lot of things, we kind of all know the big things, right? You know, we all know we're supposed to work hard or whatever, but there's a lot of subtle stuff that really pushes a candidate over the line, per se, whenever that consideration is being made. In your opinion, we're going to talk about that today, but in your opinion, what is some of those things that that people may not realize are being noticed that they should be really paying attention to?
Yeah, that's something, honestly, early in my career, I wish I had someone that kind of illustrated this, because this has taken me 20 plus years to figure out the things that we do know. And I'm sure we're missing on a couple of things. But one thing I would say is be a problem solver, not a task doer. And there's nothing wrong with people who just want to do their day-to-day, day in, day out, and do their routine thing. But if you're looking to be a lead, a technical lead, or a first level manager, or even like the CTO at an organization, they're going to be looking for someone that's going to be looking holistically, trying to do root cause analysis and solve those issues, stop stuff from reoccurring. Again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with those people that just want to do the routine task. But if you're looking to move up the chain, you definitely want to fix issues, like permanently fix them, not just fix the symptoms.
Yeah, I mean, efficiency, I think, is something every leader and every position in IT needs to do. We've talked about this in prior episodes, but technology is continuing to grow. And when people are looking for someone to kind of step into that next level, they're wanting someone that's going to make things more efficient. And you can't do that just band-aiding things. You have to get to the root cause. We have this discussion all the time about kind of where that line is, right? Because there are some things that you could kind of run down for, years, it seems like, and never figure out why. But those big things, those kind of complaints that you hear around the company from other departments, things like that. Yeah, fixing those things really does make you stand out. And I think it's something to think about, really, is I think we think of only those times when we do those things are when people are noticing us. But really, I think one of the things that for me is people don't realize is you're getting interviewed every day. It's not just one day. It's not only when you fix those problems, but it's kind of, I think of like a job as kind of a roller coaster. Of course, there's highs and lows. But in all of those things, someone is watching you, right? It may be the person who's like that higher level supervisor, could be the CEO, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could just be someone randomly in another department. Someone is watching you, and just know that like every day you really have to be interviewed, and you can't take like a day off. And this is especially true, I think, in times of crisis, when things are kind of tougher, right? That's really when I think those people that you want in those roles really kind of like step up.
Yeah, we've got a recent example at our organization. I'm not going to call them out by name, but I think the title will give it away to the people that work there. But we had someone that was a lineman, and as a lineman, he really made people kind of notice him. Just he's always trying to knock things out. He's always courteous. He's always trying to assist and make things better. While I've been there, he got brought on as a staker. And then even as a staker, he was continuing to do the same thing. He was just he was doing that root cause analysis for issues that they would occur. He was trying to learn, trying to be better. And he's just super courteous, super helpful, always treat people with respect. And a manager position opened up, and he was just one of the people that, everyone thought about him as soon as that job even opened up. And he nailed the interview and got the position and has been a rock star ever since. But that's to me, that was a perfect example at our organization being interviewed every day.
Yeah, I had a prior boss who, his saying kind of, and I'm sure he didn't make it up, but his saying that he used a lot was like, be a star where you are. If you feel like you want to move into that advanced position or that leadership position, or maybe the department leadership position, people got to know that you are going to take care of business where you're at, right? You can't be, it's kind of like, to use a sports analogy, you've ever heard someone's like, they'll ask them a question like, hey, so and so, you guys, are you looking forward to the playoffs? And they're saying, no, we're focused on Sunday. We're focused on the game ahead. And I don't think you really have to be that. You have to focus on where you're at and the game you're playing right now before you can focus on like what's the potential games coming in the future. So that's something a lot of people, I think, I'm going to try to not generalize, but I think a lot of people who are overly ambitious are constantly focused on like what's to come. And it really like sabotages them. I think it, in the present, because they're just not getting what they need to get done right now. And so for me, I would say is make sure you're doing what you're doing now at 110%, because there's nothing worse than like someone that has potential and you're like, man, they would be, you think they might be a great leader, only for them to kind of fail in their current role.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of something. It was actually at the CTCE, and Brandon Robinson gave a presentation. And one of the things he mentioned was be an expert at something. And that really resonated with me, because I got to reflecting, and there's some people that I've known where somehow they happened upon a leadership role, but they really weren't an expert at anything specific. And I think that's really difficult to succeed at that. And kind of what you're talking about, if you're looking at the picture ahead, but you're not being successful at your current position, that's going to be hard. If you're an expert at something, that's going to make others trust you and kind of go to you. And it doesn't matter what you're an expert at, just an expert at something. For IT, it could be like a sysadmin, it could be a SCADA administrator, or it could be just outside IT, it could be a communicator, or even like a CFO that knows the ins and outs of the cooperative finance. No matter what you're an expert in, as long as you're an expert in something, people will respect that and look to you. And one thing that we talked about previously is, that being an expert, it also, besides building confidence in others of you, it also it makes you build confidence of yourself. So if you're an expert at something, you're going to say, you know this, you got this, and you probably love that subject. And anyways, I think it helps build self-confidence if you're an expert at something.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Only thing I would add is that expertise. And I think a lot of times it's technical, just because in the IT world, because typically those first level positions are technical in nature. But I would say your expertise could be in more of the soft skills as well. Like I know people who maybe aren't as strong technically, but they're amazing project managers. And so like, when they are given a task and with a team, like it's always on time or it's typically ahead of time. Things don't slip out of budget. They get the things done. They're really, really well coordinated and organized. And to me, that's kind of an expertise. And for those that maybe out there that say, well, I'm not real sure what I'm the expert in, I would just say, what do people come and ask you about, right? When people are asking for advice inside the office, what do they ask you for? Hey, so-and-so, like I'm really having a tough time with these mapping programs, right? Or I'm not sure about the cyber question. Then maybe that's kind of your expertise, right? What are people coming and asking you about? One thing that I had on my list, and this is just kind of something personally for me that I feel is very important, is being a principled person. So I think that's two parts. The first part of it is having principles, right? If that's integrity, if that's honesty, telling people things and then following through with it. All of those kind of things that we think about when we think about those principled things, being a servant, right? But I think it's a two-part thing. So you can be principled, but it's also people watch you a lot whenever like the going gets tough, or if it directly impacts you negatively. And that's something that everybody I think struggles with. But when people are like that, when they're principled to a fault, or when it negatively impacts them and they still stand on those principles, that is something that really like stands out in kind of a sea of people out there. I think it really like pokes its head above.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me just basically like lead by example. And that's really preach a lot in the military, and believe this or not, in the military, in the Marines, I've had some of the best leaders of my life, but I've also had some of the worst. And the ones that stand out, like they would lead from the front, not all the time, but when needed, they would lead from the front, and they would do things that, like, none of them would ask you to do things that they wouldn't do themselves. But the ones that weren't some of the bad leaders we had, it'd be like, do as I say, not as I do. And I definitely agree with you on being principled. It's definitely important.
So we've talked a little bit about some of the things that get noticed, let's say more in positive. But what are, in your mind, what is something that you think is more of a negative thing, right? Something to like kind of avoid doing versus something to make sure you are doing, that you think either doesn't get noticed or people think maybe it's noticed more than it is, or it's negatively noticed.
Yeah, one thing is really just it's kind of thinking you have arrived and you have nothing else to learn. I'm sure we've all seen this in our times working in IT, but you'll see someone where they were good and then they kind of stopped growing in their IT role, and that's one of those things. That's one of the worst things you can do. I think it's bad for any department, but it's especially bad in IT. If just say you've been doing this for 30 years and you got to where you would do things in Excel and Access, and you kind of just stop growing from there. Not that those don't have any values or whatever, but we need to do scripting, we need to do other things. And I've seen people just kind of get left behind, and really they don't really become much of an asset where they got left behind and they don't know like the current inner workings. It makes it hard to be a good contributor if you're kind of static. It's one of those things where you got to do continuous learning, whether that's conferences, education. I mean, there's free education, like I hate to say it, but like on YouTube, you can get a lot of education on that, or just working with others, or just trying to do something outside your comfort zone to help you learn. And anyways, just if you become complacent in this role, like you're definitely not going to go very far.
Yeah, I agree. IT is such a changing landscape. Even if you're very technically skilled and you come in to an organization, usually, a lot of the theory, let's say, stays the same, but a lot of things change. Like early on in my career, I did a lot of virtualization. Well, now we're seeing more cloud native workloads. That's completely different, really, than kind of a Windows virtualized environment. So that's the kind of thing where you have to expand yourself and learn new things. Or otherwise, like even what advantage you have, that expert that we talked about, being an expert is something that will kind of fade away. On my list, one of the things that it's really something that, it's just a personal thing, but it really is something that I negatively notice is people that don't treat everyone the same. So if you have favorites, and it's not something you see all the time, but maybe you're in kind of a forward-facing role where you're getting like calls. Maybe you're a help desk role, something like that. If you have people that you kind of like and you're willing to kind of go above and beyond with them, but then there's other people where you kind of just do the bare minimum. Again, I think that kind of goes back to being principled as well. But if service isn't something that's critical, excellent service is always something that we want to provide. You have to do that across the board. Can't just pick and choose whenever you're going to do that. This also really plays a role whenever you're in leadership positions, especially those first level leadership positions when you go from, being on the team to managing a team. There's always people that you're going to get along with better, but you have to treat them the same. Even the people that you get along with, if they mess up, you've got to call them out as you would the person who maybe you don't get along with as much when they mess up. Again, I think it kind of goes back to being principled, but you really have to treat everyone the same.
Yeah, one thing I've seen with that is if you don't do that, it can create animosity amongst the people that feel like they're kind of getting left out. It's definitely, I do want to throw one caveat out there. You need to treat people the same, but if you're a manager, you do need to manage people a little differently because people, they got different personality traits and stuff like that, but you got to be spending equal time and not playing favorites for sure.
Yeah, and I'll kind of further explain. I guess what I'm thinking there is more on kind of the work-related stuff, right? If someone's late, you can't call one person out and not call the other person out, right?
Yeah.
Or someone doesn't get something on time, you can't forgive it for one person and then for other person be like, why in the world did this not get done on time? things like that. But yeah, absolutely. Everybody's a little different. And so kind of getting the most out of your team requires a little bit of differences there. But maybe more of those kind of principal things that I was talking about is really, really where I was going there. I think one thing kind of on the things that get noticed negatively list, people that always complain, it's not a bad thing to bring up, hey, there's an issue here and this is why this might not work. But I think you've mentioned to me, and you might mention it here, but people, leaders especially, they want people to come to them with solutions. And if you just all the time come in and saying, hey, this is not going to work, hey, this is not going to work, or, so and so did this, and that's why this is not working right now. You don't want to only come to your supervisor with only negative things. You need to have come with hopefully something fixed, like you mentioned earlier about being a problem solver.
Yeah, that's one of those things I struggle with personally. I don't know what it is, but the older I get, the more pessimistic I've kind of gotten. And it's just like you said, if my peers or if the people that work under me or even the CEO, if they're constantly coming at me, and I'm not gonna lie, like my mind goes to reasons why things won't work. So when I'm listening, like I have to like block it out a little bit, but I'm always looking at that's not going to work because of this, or that's a bad idea because of this. I really have to fight that every day. And that's one of those things where if we're saying no to everything, we're really doing ourselves a disservice. We've talked about it in the past. IT, we're business enablers, we're people enablers, and you don't enable the business, and you don't enable people by saying no all the time. So that's something like it's good to have a little bit of critique of stuff. If you're telling them no, give them some alternatives. Like, I mean, the way they're trying to do it may be not right, but there's got to be alternatives if you really think about it. And that's one thing I have a hard time. Like, I may think of a reason why that won't work, but I always at least try to come up with an alternative solution for that because there is a way to do what they're trying to get done.
Yeah, I was that was kind of on my list. The being optimistic versus pessimistic. In your mind, like, what's more important? I think there's honestly benefits to both. But if you're this person, you want to be considered for this next position. Let's say in your mind, you're looking out at your team. Let's say you got a fictional position available. What do you look for? Do you look for someone more optimistic or maybe more pessimistic?
You're definitely going to want to have someone more optimistic. If you're going to lead and inspire others, you're not going to do that by being a pessimist. And that's where I have a problem with that. I try to fight it because I know that. No, and plus people don't want to be around you. That's the other thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with calling things out if you see it, but overall, you need to be a glasses kind of half full type of person. It's definitely something that I struggle with. Obviously, I've corrected enough to keep my jobs. But anyways, you definitely want to be a more positive person overall.
All right, let's take a quick break. If you're enjoying this, please take a second to like and subscribe. We want to continue to grow the show, and we can do that, and we want to continue to provide you with larger and better, more connected guests. So to help us do that, please take a moment and like or follow the show if you don't already, and ideally share it with someone who you think might get some value out of it. Let's connect with us. We're always looking for new ideas. Reach out to us anytime, give us feedback or episode ideas you might like, and make sure to follow us on social media. All right, let's go back to it. Anthony, I know when we were doing kind of talking pre-show, something you really, really mentioned that I really, really like too, and I think it's something we have on all our job descriptions, but I think you really eloquently kind of described it, was that all other work is assigned.
Yeah.
I think that's something that people don't realize is being noticed.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you got to be willing to get your hands dirty. One of the things I knew this from my time in the military that it's pretty important. If you're wanting people to look up to you and appreciate you and feel like you're committed, and that's just kind of getting in the weeds, getting your hands dirty. And that's not just technically. I think it is definitely technically for IT people, but it also can evolve around other things. So I started at Fort County, I think it was about 3 days after Hurricane Florence hit. And even when I started, like, we didn't have, 3 days later, I think most of our meters weren't even turning at that point. Just kind of in the middle of a disaster. And like, I was new and didn't really know much. And I was hired on as an IT supervisor, but I knew enough to do this, like everything that I could help out with, whether it be help refuel trucks, pick up trash, help deliver food, even make food, go get laundry, whatever I could do. Like I went to and seek that out and try to help, as much as possible. And I think in doing that, like I bought a lot of respect from the people early on that I work with. And and there's another thing, I'm sure you know this, especially after Helene, but
Mm.
if you're in the face of disaster, like that's the thing, like people are going to remember how you respond in a major event. And anyways, just stepping up, not afraid to get your hands dirty. It's very important.
Yeah, that's that's just an awesome thing. I think when the kind of the chips are down, a good example that I would use is something that happened to us. We had an issue with our building. It's been a while back, but basically it was a power issue, and we thought we were going to have to take the well, we not thought we were going to have to take the building down, the power down, and because the generator kind of went through that panel, we weren't going to be able to keep it up unless we came up with a good solution. And one of my favorite things is everyone kind of just jumped in, and we didn't really have anyone have to like be this ultimate leader, right? Everyone kind of just looked out, figured what needed to be done, and something that inspired me, which this person's now our CEO, but there's a lady and she was the CFO at the time. She, we had sent most of the building home, and she stayed around. And being an accountant, you're not thinking about dragging things through the hallways, but she drug extension cords all through the halls, and these were the heavy extension cords because they were really, really thick, had to go all the way outside. And that's what she did. And she did that, and she did that as long as we needed. And that always stuck out to me because kind of when the going got tough, like that wasn't her job per se. No one asked her per se to do it. She kind of just stepped in, saw the other people were doing it, and then decided to jump in herself. So, and I think that kind of goes with another one on my list too, is what do you do when like nobody's watching or you think nobody's watching? The story that always gets brought up around our company, there was a guy, he was one of our senior leaders. So this is a great story. One of our senior leaders was working late. Her office is near the parking lot where she can kind of see the parking lot. There was a young guy who's just recently got into a leadership position. He walks out the back door. No one's there. Almost no one's there. There's only a few people left on the parking lot. And as he's walking to his truck, he notices that there's a box blowing around in the parking lot. Now, he's not in charge of cardboard boxes in the parking lot or cleaning. But he took time, went down, grabbed the box, took it, put it in the dumpster, and then got back in his truck to leave. And he thought nobody was watching. But that story, I kid you not, has been brought up like 5 to 6 times in relation to this person as discussions, as people were discussing them and just like the potential that they had. Be like, man, this person has potential. I mean, just look at what he does whenever nobody's watching. He's not above anything. And that's really like that little act, that simple act has meant a lot to that person. And because of that, they've become kind of a champion for this person. So when you think people aren't watching, someone is.
Another item, and we really talked about this in our Apex conversation, but it's really just being able to communicate to where people can understand. With IT, and I think this is just something we all have a challenge with in IT, is we want to do technical speak, jargon, acronyms, all that for leaders when they're looking at IT for be future leaders, like they're looking at someone that they can understand and relate to. So communications, that's something you really need to work on. And also, it's not just spoken, it's also written, stuff like that. When you're communicating emails, if you're sending like we're doing network maintenance and people read it, do they even understand what's going to be down, what's not going to be down? Or is it just a bunch of that they don't understand? That's something that you really need to focus on and be able to make people understand like what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think especially for IT leaders as well, that if you don't have this skill set, you need to work on it. And that is just being that translator between the business. As IT professionals, really our number one job is, especially in the leadership positions, is to translate what the business needs, right? You got to figure out what the business needs. You got to ask the questions of those other people. And then you got to translate that into a technology solution. So getting good at that really helps out because people need to know what's going on. And then I would say kind of along with this is making sure you're not making people feel dumb, right? You have to translate it in a way that they understand without like being demeaning to them. So it's a little tricky, I think sometimes, but definitely that's something you need to be looking at because that 100% gets noticed, especially at those senior level positions where they know you're going to be in front of the board, you're going to be in front of senior leadership or maybe the leadership team at the co-op a lot. They can't have someone up there that's just talking for 15 minutes and no one knows what they're saying. So definitely something to work on that. Anthony, I was going to ask you a question and get your thoughts on this. Something we talked about kind of pre-show, and I wanted you to kind of discuss it. I thought you did a good job of it. Is that kind of that balance of risk taking, like not wanting to take risk, but also like not taking too many risks. I think you really said it well.
Yeah, I know we've seen some people where they don't they kind of freak out if you ask them to do something outside their comfort zone, and and typically, and there's nothing wrong with this, but like those people are more task doers, like we mentioned earlier. If people aren't taking risk, that means they're not pushing the envelope. They're not pushing themselves. That's something where, if someone makes a mistake and even if it has a decent impact on the company or your team, as long as they owned up to it and learned from it and aren't repeating it, I don't hold that against them. I would rather see someone trying to push the envelope than not. And especially if you're wanting to move up and be a manager or be a leader, we need people that are going to make judgment calls. And if you're making judgment calls, you're eventually going to make a mistake. It's just a matter of when. So I think if I see someone that really doesn't make any mistakes, that I hate to say it, but that kind of tells me that they're really not leaning into it and not willing to try to make a big difference. It's part of the game. You don't want to make repeated mistakes, but if you're not making any mistakes, you're really not pushing the envelope.
Yeah, I completely wholeheartedly agree with that. I want someone to be able to make mistakes because, and this kind of the flip side of this is as a leader, you need to let people make mistakes because otherwise they're not going to do stuff on their own. I mean, they're just going to come and check in with you on every single thing. And that's not real helpful. That's not something that not going to get a lot done that way. So yeah, you want someone to be willing to push it a little bit. I think that's really what drives you forward and really creates those big wins. But you also don't want to be making a mistake every single day. So there is kind of a fine line there, but kind of keep an eye on that. If you're wanted to be considered for that position, is some risk taking is good. You don't want to be overly conservative because really that big value is probably going to be out of your reach if that's where you kind of land. Anthony, as we wrap up this episode, which it's been a great episode, I think it's going to really help a lot of people, but kind of those last things, right? I know we each kind of had one we kind of saved. I'll let you start, but if you want to leave people with one thing they need to be paying attention to, what would it be?
Yeah, this one kind of ties into everything we spoke about, but it's own the hard stuff. You're not going to really move forward unless you're pushing yourself. Try to take on that tough project that no one else wants to do, or this critical upgrade, or something that has a really tight deadline. The items where people kind of cower, when they say it, like, I don't want to do that, like, because I'll mess it up, or that's impossible to do. If you push yourself and do these hard things, like, that's something that, one, your peers are going to remember that, and two, the leaders that are above you are going to remember that. Own the hard stuff. Don't be afraid to take on big responsibilities. That really can showcase all these other things that you're doing well. I think it's important to do that. And also, it's for you to grow as a person, you got to push yourself. If you're not doing some kind of stretch goal or something like that, you're really not going to grow as a person.
I think that's an excellent one. The one I would leave everybody with is not letting others ask, basically keeping information to yourself and kind of hoarding that. I think this is a double-edged sword that people don't think about. So people think like this helps them maybe stand out because they're kind of like the only person who can do something, right? People have to come to them and they magically make it happen. And so in a lot of ways you might think, hey, that's a good thing, right? That's that being that expert. But there's kind of the downside of it is if people always have to come to you to do those things and nobody else can do it, then who's going to do it when you move up into the next position, right? People don't think about that. they kind of hoard the information and then there's no one to back them up. And so people think, well, gosh, if we promote XYZ person, then who's going to do AMI? Who's going to be the meter expert or whatever else it is? If there's no bench, if you can't train others to help you and to kind of take part in it, then how good of a leader are you really going to be? So I'd leave everybody with that one. I think that's one thing people they kind of miss. All right. Well, Anthony, another great episode, I thought. Again, as we mentioned, help us out and share the podcast or follow the podcast. We got some big plans. We got some awesome potential episodes coming up. I just got to get some final details ironed out with those. And until next time, this has been Off the Wire.